dangerous flash flood that happened in Athens, Greece that they've been dealing with. What is that, a motorcycle, moped, a car flipped over on its side? Look at this guy just hanging on and checking it out.
Yeah, good luck with that. Streets, they've turned raging torrents, carrying away those cycles you're talking about, tipping over the cars, all kinds of issues. Floods were strong enough to actually collapse a building.
And breaking news now is the strongest hurricane ever recorded continues its track over Mexico's southwestern coastline tonight. At 11, I'm Jeff Gianola, and look at these images from NASA and the eye of the storm. Hurricane Patricia forcing the evacuation of towns in Mexico. It has shut down airports. Millions of people impacted, including a few locals who are vacationing in Mexico. Our Cole Miller live at PDX tonight with more. Cole?
Well, Jeff, good evening. At least one Alaska Airlines flight from Puerto Vallarta was due in here tonight. However, the airport down there had canceled all of its flights by noon. Now, this storm is going to continue to affect travel. And those locals you mentioned from Vancouver and Portland, they're down there vacationing right now. Tonight, they're sharing with us what they're seeing.
The town is completely shut down.
Colleen and Jim Souders of Vancouver are weathering the wrath of Hurricane Patricia from Puerto Vallarta on Mexico's Pacific coast.
We also were told that we're no longer guests at the resort. We are now officially refugees.
As heavy winds and rain slam ashore tonight, the couple says they've been moved from their ocean view room, giving a tour to our Dan Tilkin today, to another room away from the waters.
There's a lot of people in this town that are going to be a lot worse off than we are.
There are already reports of flooding and landslides in a more mountainous area. We also spoke to a man from Portland who's down there making the trip for a friend's birthday party.
It's the type of situation where I'm not sure you want to go to sleep, right, just yet.
Brian Borneval tells us at least one of the main roads there is a parking lot, and that some are scrambling to stock up on food and water.
The grocery stores ran out of stuff, just like they would in the United States if you hear about a major snowstorm coming in.
The massive storm has Portland-based Mercy Corps ready to jump in and help out.
We're as worried as everybody is about this storm.
Its teams from that region in Guatemala and Colombia are preparing to move in.
It's critical to have eyes on the ground. We need to find out what resources people have now, what resources are they able to get, and who's already operating in the area.
And for travelers who may have plans to head south, well, you may need to be flexible.
Check with your airline. We have a number of airlines who have already said, hey, we will waive your change fees if you want to change your flights to Mexico over the next few days.
And Marie Dodds, who you just heard there from AAA Oregon, says it's usually a pretty short window to rearrange those flights, so keep that in mind. Now, other travel concerns, if you're maybe going to the Texas area, there's been heavy rain from Dallas to Houston. There's been flight cancellations into and out of those airports. You'll want to keep that in mind. More rain is expected to move through that part of the state as Patricia weakens its way as it moves that way. So if you have any travel plans, be sure to keep an eye on those. Live tonight at PDX, Cole Miller, Point 6 News.
Fueled by record temperatures in the Pacific Ocean, Hurricane Patricia formed in just 36 hours, making landfall with winds of around 250 kilometers per hour. This is the most powerful hurricane to hit the Western Hemisphere, and the authorities here had little time to organize evacuations and get residents to safety. Thousands flew out of the region whilst others huddled together to ride out a storm that was predicted to cause catastrophic damage.
If they are already here at the shelter and have settled in, and there are fewer services at night like taxis and trucks and shopping centres, what we recommend is that they stay here at the shelter.
But the initial reports from the authorities are that the storm has so far caused no major damage or loss of life. But Mexico's president is warning that this is no time for complacency.
I insist, the most dangerous part of the hurricane has yet to enter the national territory. Besides, we expect intense rains in the Pacific and in various states in the central and northeastern parts of the country. I ask the Mexican people to be watchful over the coming hours for information from government officials.
There have been some reports of flooding and landslides, but as Hurricane Patricia moves inland, it now poses a serious threat to the region's more remote areas. The hurricane will dissipate as it hits Mexico's mountains, but many rural communities have poor communication, and the risk of heavy rain and mudslides could still be a threat. The storm remains a real danger for millions who remain in its path, and daylight will give the authorities here a much clearer picture of just how much damage has been done.
In my last interview with you guys last night, I guess the eye wall hit us because this wall of wind and rain just swept in, surrounded the hotel. It was a complete whiteout. The building started to tremble, and then it started to just blow apart. And my chase partner and I, we retreated to our room. A scared hotel worker joined us, and then the people across the hall from us, their room just blew apart. The whole ceiling and the roof just blew away. They ran into our room, and we ended up 8 of us, 6 adults and 2 very small children, crammed into a tiny bathroom under a mattress. And that's how we rode this out.
And Josh, approximately how long would you estimate you guys were holed up in that sort of sheltered area?
Probably about 20 minutes when it was just like it was just going crazy. You could hear the roaring and the crashing sounds as the building was getting blown apart. But our place stayed safe. The roof blew off of our area as well of the building, but our ceiling stayed, so we ended up being okay. But the worst of it was about 20 minutes, but it was it was like being inside a tornado, basically.
Here along the service road of Interstate 45 that connects Dallas to Houston, near about 15 miles north of the town of Corsicana, where throughout most of the night the interstate, about a 30-mile stretch of it, has been shut down because much of it has been covered in water, we are told. And emergency officials just a short while ago saying that they are starting to reopen the interstate here. So as you can imagine, it is a backed up situation here. As you look around, this was the point of no return here. Basically, all the cars that have stacked up here throughout the overnight hours. And then we're looking down toward the south here, but when you come back out this way, you can see for miles and miles the cars that have been stacked up here throughout the overnight hours trying to make their way between Dallas and Houston. But it sounds like the waters have receded enough where emergency officials think it's safe enough to reopen portions of the interstate and allow traffic to start moving through. But it has been a treacherous situation throughout the night, Christy. Several dozen high water rescues along the roadways here in the Corsicana area. Emergency management official tells me that in little more than 24 hours since these rains started, they've received 17.5 inches of rain, more than 20 inches in some parts of the county around Corsicana. So a great deal of water that they've had to deal with, and they say that the rains will continue to fall. Although it's been falling, this is about as light as we've seen here throughout the overnight hours. So that is some good news, and perhaps give the waters a chance to recede here in this area as the storms continue to move through. It has been a treacherous and unrelenting downpour that we've seen here in this part of Texas.
This is out of Navarro County, where you see a freight train has derailed, and this is directly related and caused by the flooding we're seeing in this community. The tracks have washed away.
Well, we're happy to say that our 2 crew members have been picked up and are back with us. They're in good condition, no injuries, just a little wet and shaken up. But thanks to Navarro County, they were able to send out their rescuers and pick our guys up shortly before 6 o'clock this morning.
Shortly before 6 a.m. this morning. I saw in kind of the panning of the camera on this aerial shot we have on now live that there appears to be an iridescent film over the water here. Can you tell us what this train was carrying, if there's anything hazardous here, or is that something that maybe is an effect of the camera or something was there already?
Well, this train was carrying cement, which is not a hazardous material. It is simply rocks and gravel. There is concern, and we are keeping an eye out for diesel that's in the locomotive. We have our environmental contractors close by, ready to respond should we see any dangerous leaks. We have remediation equipment available, such as booms and buoys, but right now we're monitoring the situation, and as of now we don't have anything to be concerned about.
What can you tell us about what the 2 crew members on board, what these 2 conductors said about what happened?
Well, essentially, the train was headed south, and as they approached the area, the conductor saw the water start to gather over the tracks, and he put the train into an emergency stop, which isn't an immediate stop. It slows the train until it can come to a safe stop. And once it came to a stop, they were in the water, and the water was starting to rise. This was apparently a type of flash flood event. They saw the water rising and immediately evacuated the locomotive and were able to swim to some higher ground before the rescuers got out to them.
It's been a day of big surf for much of our state, and it's expected to continue through the weekend. On the Big Island, surges brought ocean water up to some homes.
This is crazy right now.
A viewer sent us this video of a surge of water that flooded the Kapoho tide pools, which is in the Puna district of the Big Island. Jonathan Blaze told us he and his friends were about to go snorkeling in the tide pools when this rush of water came.
I could just feel the power of the waves, and I knew that it was just a bad idea. I actually saw fish swimming on the road. I've never seen anything like that before.
We also spoke with Hawaii County Civil Defense. They told us this has happened several times this hurricane season due to all the storms.
Germans accused of membership in a foreign terrorist organization have gone on trial in Dusseldorf and could face up to 10 years in prison if convicted. The judge in the case said Friday that the defendants, identified as Sebastian B. and Mustafa C., are believed to have joined Islamic fighter organizations that later came under the command of ISIL. The judge says the two received weeks of military training and are believed to have actively participated in combat missions. He added that Mustafa C. is additionally accused of having been deputy commander of a combat group. Media reports say Sebastian B. is the child of divorced parents from Eastern Germany who moved to the western German city of Herford, where he found a new home in an Islamic organization led by Chechen extremists.
Now, hope springs eternal for improvements in inter-Korean ties, but unfortunately we have some discouraging developments. South Korea has fired warning shots at a North Korean patrol boat that strayed into South Korean waters. Pyongyang has called the firing a military provocation, and our Connie Kim looks into the incident and its possible repercussions.
The South Korean Navy fired 5 machine gun rounds at a North Korean patrol boat that crossed the northern limit line, the de facto maritime border between the two Koreas. Seoul's military authorities said Sunday the vessel crossed the western sea border at around 3:30 p.m. on Saturday by some 800 meters. The crossing was made just northeast of South Korea's Yeonpyeong-do Island, the site of a deadly artillery attack by the North in 2010. The North Korean vessel was reportedly cracking down on Chinese fishing boats and strayed into South Korean waters. The boat retreated about 8 minutes after the shots were fired, and no skirmishes were reported during the process. North Korea does not acknowledge the Northern Limit Line, which was drawn in 1953 at the end of the Korean War. The regime wants the border drawn farther south to divide the waters equally between the two Koreas. The North's Committee for the Peaceful Reunification of Korea called the firing a military provocation. The organization's spokesman said Sunday the vessel was conducting a routine operation when the belligerent South carried out a provocation against a boat. He warned the incident could spark military confrontation and refuel tensions on the peninsula. The incident took place as a second round of reunions for war-separated families is being held, raising concerns it could disrupt the conciliatory mood created by the two Koreas.
Syrian state TV continues its propaganda message to try and convince people that Russian airstrikes are targeting what the Syrian and Russian governments call terrorists. But the pictures on the ground tell a different story. This is what's left of the town of Qalala on the outskirts of Idlib, after Russian warplanes bombed several residential areas late on Friday. It's unclear how many people were killed. In Hama, opposition fighters belonging to Jaish al-Fath, or the Army of Conquest, announced the capture of several villages after defeating government troops and forcing them to retreat. The alliance of opposition fighters launched what it called the Battle for Hama this week after capturing Idlib earlier this month. Opposition fighters also say they've taken several towns and villages in the south of Aleppo province. Syria's armed opposition groups say they've been targeted by Russian airstrikes rather than the so-called Islamic State group. On Friday, ISIL announced it was in control of the main road connecting Aleppo to Hama. How Russia reacts to this will demonstrate its military priorities. Despite Russian airstrikes now entering their fourth week, ISIL fighters appear to be largely unaffected. Armed groups opposed to President Bashar al-Assad's regime, however, have suffered losses, not only at the hands of the Russians, but also in continuing battles with ISIL. Jamal al-Shayal, Al Jazeera.
Faced with the first U.S. combat death in Iraq in 4 years, today Pentagon Secretary Ash Carter made clear that U.S. troops will continue to face danger there.
The administration has taken great pains, the president in various permutations, to say it's not ground combat, it's not a major combat role.
They will be in harm's way. There's no question about it. And I don't want anybody to be under any illusions about that.
A U.S. military official confirms to CNN that Master Sergeant Joshua L. Wheeler, 39, of Roland, Oklahoma, a 20-year military veteran, was a member of the elite Delta Force. The deadly battle was the first time U.S. forces have directly engaged ISIS fighters on the ground in Iraq. In a joint operation with Kurdish commandos, U.S. special operators from the Delta Force raided an ISIS compound to rescue hostages thought to be in imminent danger of execution. U.S. warplanes bombed makeshift ISIS training camps, staging sites, and bridges in the area. And 5 helicopters brought in nearly 30 U.S. Special Forces and 40 Kurdish troops. The U.S. forces were not meant to enter the walled compound or directly engage the ISIS fighters. But when Kurdish forces inside the compound were overwhelmed, the U.S. commander made the decision to enter the firefight. Master Sergeant Wheeler was shot inside the compound and died later after being transported to a military hospital in Erbil. When the mission was over, the U.S. aircraft overhead destroyed the compound. U.S. troops are deployed to Iraq on a train, advise, and assist mission. However, under current rules of engagement, they are allowed to return fire when they or their partner forces come under attack.
When a firefight ensued, this American ran to the sound of the guns, and all the indications are it was his actions and that of one of his teammates that protected those who were involved in breaching the compound.
This risky mission was launched, say U.S. military officials, after U.S. surveillance spotted freshly dug mass graves inside the compound. U.S. officials say that 70 prisoners were rescued, 20 Iraqi security forces, as well as Iraqi civilians, and interestingly, ISIS fighters accused by their own group of spying. Missing, however, were the Kurdish captives they were originally sent in to rescue.
Violent clash in Tokyo on Sunday. The scuffles broke out between Turks and Kurds after around 600 people had gathered at the Turkish embassy to cast their votes in the upcoming Turkish general elections. The Tokyo Metropolitan Police Department heightened security measures after the incident to reconcile the rival groups. All 3 injured people are believed to be Kurdish, but the cause of the fight still remains unclear. The Kurds are Turkey's largest ethnic minority, comprising up to a quarter of its population.
Active severe weather reports that occurred on Friday, and even a tornado caught on camera, as you see here in Orange City, Iowa. Not a lot of people living in this location, a very rural farmland, but certainly nonetheless, look at that imagery through there. Now, we had a lot of severe ingredients coming into play on Friday. We will continue to track severe weather as we go into the weekend, including a lot of rainfall, which is going to be occurring in Texas and beyond as we go across the southeast into Monday.
Unbelievable view or what? This is a view of Hurricane Patricia from up on the International Space Station. This was on Friday, taken by astronaut Scott Kelly. It's been retweeted almost 40,000 times at this point, as it well deserves, because it's really just very fascinating, I think, to see something from this perspective and to contrast it. You know, it looks so serene from up in space, even when you're in real time. But once you get down in it, of course, it's a much different story. These are the hurricane hunters back on Thursdays. They were kind of surveying some information inside there. Very important job, by the way. You can see they're in the eye here, so it's kind of calm. But it's a different story when they move through the eye wall. I mean, these guys fly right through the worst of the storm. And remember, this was the strongest storm that's ever been recorded in the Western Hemisphere. Look at that. Listen to that. I like flying. I even like some turbulence. I'm a weather geek. But I'd still probably be a little bit scared to do that. So these guys have a lot of bravery, and their information is so critical to helping the forecasts get better as the storm progresses.